Hey fam, what's good, what's good? Welcome back to another one. So now we will be having a practical example of what we made mention above. Okay, now I want you guys to look at this chart right here. Now, you know what? PowerPoint basically cut off this part right there, but this right here is a 15-minute time frame. Okay, this is a 15-minute time frame, and we are now going to find ourselves identifying what we basically just made mention. Okay, now let's look at the following. Let's look at the following. Right, so with a 15-minute over here, obviously on the higher time frame, which is our 1 hourly time frame, that high right there will basically be our major high. Right, and this low right here will basically be our major low on our 1 hourly time frame. So now all we did was we dived into our 15-minute time frame, and we are now just going to find ourselves making use of this leg right here. Now let's see what happened. Right, so here we can basically see we had a nice little push towards the downside. Right, we came back up for a nice correction. Right, so this area is a major high point. Right, this area is a major low point. Right, after creating that major high, price had a nice shift towards the downside. Right, doing what? Creating a nice little major low right there as well. After creating that major low, price found itself having a beautiful push to the upside, right, creating another actual beautiful high, right, and had an actual push back towards the downside and created another actual low right there. Now look at the formation, right? Look at this formation. If we're going to look at price from this area right here, we can basically see, you know what, once we had a closure below this area right there, what did we have? We now basically had a market structure shift, right? So after having that actual market structure shift, we're going to wait for price to have some sort of an actual pullback. Can you guys see we had a nice pullback back into this fair value gap, and then we had a nice little shift back towards the downside, right? We took out this low right there, so this will basically be considered as a break of structure, right? Because now we are simply just continuing with our bearish momentum. Price basically found itself creating a nice lower low over here, but failed to take out this actual low right there. Instead, price had a nice little push towards the upside, right? Now we can see this push from this point onwards was a quite significant push, right? So we will take into consideration that this is also an actual major area, right? A major low. Okay, now let's look at the following, right? Since we basically said that this area will also be considered as a major high area, right? If we're going to extend price to the right hand side, we can see that price did take out this, you know what, that high, and we had a nice little shift back towards the downside, right? Your fair value gap literally came through inside that region right there on your actual lower time frame. Okay, so our 15-minute time frame, right, will basically serve as the major area, and then everything below will basically be like the minor areas, right? Our minor internal market structure, right? So now let's look at this. Can you guys see, right? After we basically took out this area right here, this major high, right, price basically found itself having a nice little pushback towards the downside, right? That right there was a market structure shift, since price basically found itself having a closure above, right? So now we don't want to see these lows being taken out right over there, as these lows are major areas of you know what, a major low, right? So we don't want to see those lows being taken out right there. And can you guys see we had a nice little shift back towards the downside? Price had a lovely push back towards the upside from that area onwards. Now I want to bring this to your attention, right? Where's the next major area? The next major area is literally this high right there. So you are expecting price to have some sort of a reaction from this major area. And that is basically what I meant by, you know what, find yourself looking at your major area and move from there onwards, right? Don't be so fixated on what's happening with your actual internal market structure over here. First, find yourself figuring out how price is reacting from your major area, right? And then you're going to dive into your lower time frame and see how the internal structure is behaving, right? And once you can see how structure is behaving, this is now literally you making the judgment in future price on, you know what, are we navigating to our actual major high? Are we navigating to our major low? So now you can basically find yourself, you know what, play with your internal structure, if that makes sense, right? So check this out. Here we have some nice buy side liquidity at this major high. So we can basically see that, you know what, this area over here is a point of interest where we can find ourselves looking for some nice shorts, right? But you're not just gonna say that, okay, cool, since we have an actual major high, you know what, I'm gonna look for some shorts. There needs to be extra confluences as well. Now, can you guys see where these arrows, which I found myself boxing out right there, right? These arrows right there is basically pointing out these relatively equal lows right there. Now, once you guys are seeing equal lows, right, relatively equal lows, this signals that there's a lot of liquidity resting below price, right? On top of that, we do have a nice gap over here as well, right? So this is already a signal that we can find ourselves having a nice pushback towards the downside, right? So there we found ourselves boxing out our equal lows, right? So now our equal lows is a point of interest where we can find ourselves seeing price hit back into after taking out a major high. Okay, so what is the next thing you're going to find yourself doing? If price is going to find itself tapping into that major high, right, now you're going to prep for some lovely short opportunities, right? So now we're going to find ourselves tapping inside this region right over here. Okay, so now we're going to scale down to our lower time frame, which is basically our 1 minute time frame, right? So 1 minute time frame, this will all be like your minor areas, right? Not your major areas, but your minor area. So now you need to keep in mind that higher time frame, we took out a major area of buy side, right? A major swing area. Okay. Now you're going to find yourself waiting for price to take out a minor swing low, right? So everything from your 15-minute down or from your 5-minute down, that will basically be your minor area. So now you want to look for an internal market structure shift. Okay, that is what you're going to find yourself waiting for next. Now, can you guys see what did we find ourselves doing right over here? We basically found ourselves having a nice little high. And can you guys see how price basically took out that high right there? Boom, right? So we now see that, you know what, a high was taken out. What is the next thing we're going to find ourselves doing? The next thing we want to see is a low being taken out. And can you guys see that here we have a nice swing low, right? We have a low with a market giving us a higher low to the left and a higher low to the right? So that is a qualified swing low right there, right? And with price basically having a pushback towards the downside, having a closure below this actual swing low right there, right? That is considered as a what? What do you think? What will that be? Will that be a BOS or will it be a MSS, a market structure shift? That right there will basically be considered as a market structure shift. So now you are basically seeing that your lower time frame is changing market structure after taking out a major area. Okay, a major high. So what is the next thing you're going to find yourself doing? Next, you can literally just find yourself getting out that Fibonacci from that high to that low right there, right? As you guys can basically see that we do have a nice fair value gap coming through right there. We also have a nice fair value gap coming through right over there as well, right? Which one are you going to find yourself participating in when it comes down to price, right? So you're going to get out your Fibonacci from that high to that low right there. You're going to identify your premium area because this is basically where you want to find yourself looking for some lovely short opportunities, right? So there you can see that the low was taken out. Your premium area is now literally coming through inside this area right over there, right? This region right there, that's your premium area. And here you guys can literally see that, you know what, that fair value gap is lining up inside your premium area. right? So now all you're going to find yourself doing is literally just be patient and wait for price to have some sort of an actual pullback back into your point of interest to look for some lovely short opportunities, right? Where can your targets be? Obviously over here, it's not going to be your 50%, but you know what? Your nearest swing low, which is currently coming through right over there, right? Where will your stops be? Your stops can literally be above this candle over here, which basically form the fair value gap. Okay, boom. Check this out. So there you guys can now see that price literally came all the way up back into your fair value gap, back into your premium area, right? Tap the area, and there you had a nice little shift back towards the downside, covering your 1-to-2 ratio. Most importantly, I want you guys to at least cover that 1-to-2 ratio right there. And this is how you're going to find yourself implementing everything we just made mention above, right, into your actual charts. The exact same thing applies when it comes down to some buying opportunities. And can you guys see right over there? Price literally came back up into your point of interest, right? And had a lovely shift back towards the downside, back into the equal lows we found ourselves having right there. Why back into that area? There's simply because there's a lot of liquidity resting below price right there. Okay, so that is it when it comes down to, you know what, how you're going to find yourself applying this, what I basically just made mention. I hope you guys have a clear understanding of what I went through, right? So I'm gonna see you guys in the next one. It's me, your boy D. I'm out.